November and December wrap up because I got a lot of books here actually. Kind of surprised. I didn't think there'd be that many. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is Murder in Old Bombay. I listened to this on audio. It's by Nev Marsh. Marsh. I gave it 4 stars. It might be a slightly generous 4 stars. There's a lot to recommend this book. The characters, I loved the characters. I love the mystery. I mean, I figured out pretty quickly who did it, but I think you're supposed to. It's more of a how and why kind of thing going on. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in there that's a little different. But the character, Jim Agnihotri, but he was a really neat character. So he kind of collected people along the way to help. And then, you know, kind of passed them out as you will, you know, back to where they belonged, those that could and those that couldn't. It was that was really neat because it really fit who he was. He had been an orphan, and so he kind of understood people who needed connection, and so that was really super cool. But what did bother me in this one is that it seems to be a British thing. There's an awful lot of irreverent uses of God's name. Here, the language thing wasn't. I don't think there were that many other words, but my goodness, I was getting annoyed. And so that definitely killed the star. The other thing that bothered me, it's a really neat romance because there's this really fun mutual respect in a time where that doesn't always happen, especially from someone who is in a higher class, obviously. And when you've got an orphan who is also illegitimate, he's not considered to be very desirable, and this woman is definitely from a higher family. So even though, you know, he's got a British father who is somebody, he doesn't know who that father is. And so these parents aren't going to let him have anything to do with it. And this is where it all went haywire for me, because this romance, the parents were against it. Not against him as a person, but against the romance. And I'm like, okay, because that's what I know of Indian culture. It fit. But then though it made for a more fun romantic plot, it totally went off the rails, and the author did things that I just don't see happening in Indian culture, even today, much less then. And so that kind of killed it for me. But the mystery was good. The story was good. I don't know if I'll read another one or not. I can't imagine that we're going to have less of the irreverent uses of God's name. And there was quite a bit. For what it's worth, Murder in Old Bombay, if those don't bother you, you might enjoy it, but there you go. And then I also I finished from the Fall into Faith, the eschatology one, I finished Matthew 24 Fulfilled. Like, it's not that I disagree with everything in this book, because I don't. There was actually a few things that this thing made me think about, that, you know, suddenly other parts of scripture were making so much sense. And I was like, oh, I get it. Whoa, wait a minute. There was some really good stuff in here, but it got my brain going, and which I love when a book does that. But this book has so many problems too. Number one, it is insanely repetitive. Insanely. I understand, you know, he's showing a different position than is commonly taught. And so he's, you know, kind of combating the repetition of something else. I could see that maybe that's what he was doing there. But it was constant. And then he talked about in this, he said he wrote the book because he had been taught one school of eschatological thought And he just studied the Bible with that understanding instead of studying the Bible for itself. And so he was used to reading people's thoughts on the Bible instead of the Bible. So he wanted to study the Bible and understand what the Bible actually said for itself. That's great. I'm totally behind him on that. And then he turned around and literally half the book is quotes of other people. That really bothered me. Because it's like, well, then what's the point? And don't get me wrong, the other people had some great quotes, but there was so much. And then I have to admit, near the last couple of chapters, I did get to the point where I was skimming because I was pretty much bored to tears and just tired of the repetition. It was, I could skim and not deal with so much repetition. I was trying to find an example of the last thing. There we go. The book, this was written pre-internet. And so the concept of writing in all capitals being kind of like shouting wasn't a thing when it was written, but there are large sections where it gets old. Anytime, instead of using italics, anytime he wants to emphasize, he does just these sections of, and it drove me crazy. I gave it, oh, for a second there I thought I gave it 4 stars. I'm like, there's no way I gave that 4 stars. I gave it 3 stars, and I feel like that's a little generous. But because it did make me think, and because it did give me sources to go to look at other things, I gave it the 3 stars, but it's generous and I don't recommend it. So there's that. I don't know if I'll keep it or not. I don't know. Okay, next up, I read an ebook by L.E.K. It's part of the Redemption Ridge. I don't know what made me pick it up because it's not really my thing. It's like a kind of a westernish ranch multi-author series. It was Wooing the Widower, Christmas in Redemption Ridge. I gave it 4 stars, and that's a little generous, but it takes place in Colorado. You've got a realtor who is, she's going to this ranch as kind of a spa thing, just kind of get away. She's going to spend Christmas there, and there's someone there that she has known, and there's, it's kind of got this like romance that she would be interested in, but he's totally not, and then everything, kind of falls into there, and it's really not my thing. I don't know why I picked this up, but in this one, there are a few things that shouldn't have worked that kind of did. Number one, it's a mature age thing because, you've got he's a widower. They both have grown children, and they've known each other for quite a while. So there's like a little bit of almost insta love, if you will, especially on her part. But on the other hand, they've known each other for quite a while. Then there's kind of a rush to be together because, they're older. Not old, but older, and they don't, when you're 20, you've got the next 60 years together. When you're 60, you may have 20 years together, so I get where they're going with it and that idea, but on the other hand, there's that part of me that's like, yeah, you don't have all the time in the world, but is it ever too much time to be sure? Because when you make a vow, you make a vow. So that kind of bothered me. There were some good subplots in there which kept it from being too rushed novella-ish. And I think it was Christmassy. It feels like it was Christmas. Yeah, because they put up a tree in the whole 9 yards. And I'm trying to remember what else there was about it. There were some really good faith elements in it. I'll give it that. It was just a nice story. Not sorry I read it. I might actually read the first one, but I will say, I think you need to read these in order because there were characters that I clearly was supposed to know something about and didn't. And I tell you, it's really funny. In one of the early books that I wrote, I kind of had this character. I felt like it fit because you've got, it was 30 Days Hath, and you have a whole bunch, you've got basically 12 women who are trying to see if this guy is the guy for them. And so it seemed reasonable that one of them could be a little too intense. And I had fun writing it. And even at the time I was like, yeah, but was it over the top? I don't know. But on the other hand, you know, this is a thing that does happen. I have seen it happen in real life. And so it's not like it's only something that happens in books. It actually does happen in real life. So I was like, okay, whatever. But I'm telling you, every time I see it again since then, I like it less. And it's gotten to the point where when you've got that character that's a little over the top obsessive, I'm just like, it kind of spoils the book for me, which is why I think I gave it 4 stars. And it's a slightly generous 4-star. I think it's more of a 3.5 for me. It was just nice. You know, it was, if you like ranch, and if you like romance, and if you like mature age romance, then it's a series that I would recommend. But again, you kind of have to start at the beginning of the series so that you know who some of these people are. But the more I'm thinking about it, I really did like the layers that it did. You know, for a short book, it had a lot of layers and it didn't feel rushed. Even though the romance is fast, it was fast for a purpose rather than just to rush the story. So there's that. So then I read the next Happily Ever Homicide that followed Juniper Bean. Now, you know, Juniper Bean, I really loved the story. I really loved the characters and the way they talked. And I mean, they're a bit intense. I mean, it is totally closed door. There are moments that are a little sensual for my taste, but it was doable because the story was so good. It was a lot of fun. I think there's probably, and I should say this about all books, I should point out, I miss a lot of innuendo. Innuendo, particularly sexual innuendo, I tend to miss. I read subtext well unless it's innuendo. I mean, I just don't get it. But, so there may be more in there that I knew of, but I really loved that book. I really enjoyed it. So what I think I want to do on this one, because I don't want to mess up, and I was really careful with how I worded it, and I'm really afraid I'm going to give away spoilers. And when you're talking about a mystery, spoilers are extra bad. So I'm going to read my review. That's really exciting, I know, but at least I won't mess things up. So I said this should have been a 5-star read. I really love Juniper Bean, and this has everything in it that I loved about Juniper Bean. A really fun mystery. Totally didn't see the twist despite guessing whodunit. It got me good. Great characters. Seriously, if I have any complaints, it's that Man Bun is maybe a bit too much of a Marty Stew. But that said, he wasn't at the same time. Just in one particular area. Seriously, the guy couldn't have said or done one more relational thing more perfectly if he tried. But that was one strength, you know, overinflated strength. So there you have it. Heidi Lucy was awesome. Perfectly awkward and delightful. Fun. Determined. Seriously. Mitchell knows how to write characters who feel like they breathe through the pages. I love her characters. But, big fat pregnant butt. Heidi's habit of using a mild euphemism for excrement got old really fast. She would go bleep, 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 bleep. And it's not, most people don't have a problem with the word, but I do. No, but what she used, it bothered me. Most people aren't bothered by it. I get that, but I kept wanting to thrust a roll of toilet paper at her. Still, that wouldn't have cut off more than half a star at most if it weren't for the sizzle. Look, there were a few awkward moments in Juniper Bean that were really uncomfortable for me. I chalked them up to me and tried to ignore them. By comparison, the physical and emotional moments in this one were ramped up by a factor of 10 or more. No, there are no bedroom scenes. That's one small favor, but oh my word. Look, if I'd been reading the book, there would have been a lot of page flipping. As it was, whenever I could skip forward on the audio, I tried to. But I listened while doing other things, so it wasn't easy. It was just so much more intense than the last one. And I'm sorry to leave the series here. Mitchell's writing is fabulous. I mean, I like a first-person present author's writing. Her characterization is out of this world and her mysteries are fun. The physical side of the romantic plot is just too much for me. It killed my enjoyment nearly every time the couple got touchy. So if you think cozies are too tame in the romance department, this book is for you. And it's true. I loved so much about this book, but this one was way more sizzly than the last one. And the last one was as bad as much as I could take. So I'm not going to be able to read another one. And I'm bummed because she's a great writer. And if anyone reads a book by her later and says, oh, the sizzle's gone or it's way down, I want to know about it because I want to support the lower sizzle. But B, I just want to enjoy her characters. I love how she writes characters. They're so good. So Heidi Lucy loses her mind, 3 stars, and I'm done with this series. That was sad. Then I read my last Chantal Reads All Day for the year. No, it wasn't. I'm a liar. I read my November Chantal Reads All Day When the Meadow Blooms by Anne Gabhart. This book, guys, oh my goodness. I loved it when the first time I started it, and then when I picked it back up again, it's even so much better. So the mother in this book was married to basically a scoundrel, and he's dead. She has consumption, tuberculosis, and so she goes off to a sanatorium, and the only way she can do it is she has to put her daughters in a children's home while she's in this sanatorium getting well. She can't support the kids if she's dead, so she does this hard thing, leaves them there. The home is not a good place. The oldest daughter, there's so much that happens, but basically the oldest daughter is there past the age out time for a while, and then everything goes to a head. But she needs to get out of this sanatorium. She's doing better, but she's still weak. But she could have a relapse at any time. So they don't want her to infect anyone. So they want to keep her there. But on the other hand, she's got kids to raise. And they're in this home. And they've been in this home for a couple of years. And so the oldest daughter writes to her uncle and begs her uncle to get them out of there. You know, she promises to take care of the house and to do all kinds of things, anything to get them out of this home and to get her mother out of the sanatorium and go live where they are. This uncle has, it's kind of a Beauty and the Beast sort of scenario. This uncle had been in a fire and he's horribly scarred. He's become a recluse. And then there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind all of that comes out in the book. But eventually, yeah, they go live with this uncle, and it's all about these people becoming a family. And it was a beautiful, beautiful story. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars probably before I got halfway through. I was like, you're going to have to do something really bad for me to chuck it down. Absolutely great. I will be keeping it at least for a while because there was just a lot in here I want to read again. And really enjoyed it. So When the Meadow Blooms, Anne Gabhart, great story. Great story. Okay. Then, and I'm just going based on what's here on my Goodreads thing so that I don't have to fight it. A Season on the Wind by Suzanne Woods Fisher. I have the physical book somewhere, but might be over there. But I listened on audio, I think. Yeah, I listened on audio. And it was really, really, really good on audio. So this one it's one of her Amish books. And Suzanne Woods Fisher's is one of the few Amish authors that I really actually enjoy. Hers just tend to be different. Now this one it's kind of cool. So you have Micah, who is an expert birder. He is like a guide who takes people to see birds that birders want to see, and so they can add them to their field books that they come up with. And like between chapters, there's notes from his field guide. He has a great sense of humor. He's a really you kind of get a sense of how he sees people from it. Now he's got a really bad stutter, so he doesn't like to interact with people, and yet he's this guide. And it's just a wonderful story. Just him and his sister's relationship is really, really cool. But he and his sister have taken over a family home in her little area of Stony Ridge. And was it the Dottie house that they've turned into like a bed and breakfast, I think. But somebody comes back to the community to stay in that house. He's a well-known birder. He comes and stays with his cousin, and they stay there. And he's there to document. He's well-known now. He grew up in the area, but he's well-known. He knows, he's written all these books on birds, and he wants to see this rare bird that has been sighted there. And it's just this whole story of why he left the community, their friendship, he and the gal, the sister, can't remember her name. There's just so many little things going on in it. It's a really richly layered story, but it's ultimately a story of where does your faith lie, and when God's people fail you, why do you reject God when it's his people that blew it? It's one of those things where that be the change you want to see kind of thing. He is so messed up from just all the ugliness that he experienced in the group, and then all that came from it. And now, he's back, and he's kind of having to deal with everything. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story. And there is a sequel, and I have the sequel. I think it's in the escape room. I have the sequel, but I haven't read it yet. Loved it. I wrote, this is seriously the best kind of Christian romance. Yes, it is a romance, but it's more than that. It's the story of hope, faith, and redemption. It's broken people finding the true source of all healing. And in Suzanne's sweet, gentle way, it tells those hard things with a comforting hug, even as characters do stupid, stupid things. I ended my review with, the birding is so thoroughly woven into the story, it feels as if you've entered something by Ellen Montgomery blended with a bit of Gene Stratton Porter. And it's true. It has just the description and the characterization, all of that is very, very, very Ellen Montgomery-ish to me. And I've been spending so much time in her books right now that, it was feeling very familiar. But just all that bird information that doesn't feel heavy, but you learn so much. That felt very Gene Stratton Porter, so it was just kind of all melded and blended, and it was great. So loved that one, gave it 5 stars. I will probably be keeping that one. And then, okay, this book, guys, On Moonberry Lake by Holly Barney. It is a debut novel. It is her world, if you will. She said all of her books will always be in this world of Moonberry. I gotta say, this is not an exciting story. Not a lot happens, and yet a lot does. But it's a bit Mitford-ish in how it's just kind of living life in Moonberry with these characters. The characters are a hoot. What was her name? Widgie, that woman. Oh my gravy. She's crazy. I mean, she drinks a case of Dr. Pepper every few days, and she's got this dog that she pretty much worships. And she just, she's crazy handy with anything plumbing and electrical and repair related, while you don't want to eat her food. Just don't. So, I mean, Widgie was great. Then there's a character that Cora? I think her name's Cora. There's a character that Cora works for. He's almost agoraphobic, I think. And he's got problems. And he's very persnickety and wants things just his way. And then it's just really cool how she worms her way into his heart. So then he just becomes this really neat person, willing to give up, oh my goodness, something in my eye, willing to give up who he is and what he likes for her when things happen. And yet it's not romantic. It's just a really neat friendship. There's the gal at the grocery store that every single time wants to know, where are your coupons? You need to be using coupons. And who will decide that, no, you don't want that thing because that's not good for you. You want this thing over here. And I mean, she's such a hoot. Everybody in this town is such a neat character. And there are secrets from the family. And I mean, there's just a lot. And yet it's just a slow, gentle book. It's not exciting. I mean, if you're looking for a really exciting book, this isn't it. But I loved it. I want to go back. I want the next book. I want it now because it was just so much fun. And the newspaper excerpts, I was rolling. I was reading them to my husband. Even he was laughing. I mean, it was just great book. Can't wait for another one. Definitely keeping, because I have a feeling I will read it again. Then I read Matthew Costello and Neil Richards do the Cherringham Mysteries with, I know the dog's name is Riley. So Jack is an American detective who is retired and living in Cherringham, England. Sarah runs a digital, kind of, they build websites. It's a graphic design kind of thing. And but they do this like sleuthing thing together. It's not a romantic relationship. And I've read that it never will become one, but I also have read that lots and lots and lots of readers aren't happy about that and they want that. But this is like number 45. In the beginning, Sarah's kids one of them was middle grade or lower, and the other one was slightly older, 15 maybe. And now the older daughter is late 20s, somewhere in there. So, I mean, they've been going on for quite a while, and they've just stayed friends, which is nice on the one hand, because, I mean, you have shows like, I don't know, like Castle, where you have the great chemistry between people, and then they get together and suddenly the chemistry's gone. So it's kind of cool that they're not doing that they're just sticking with a friendship. But on the other hand, part of me feels like it's a little unrealistic, because they clearly have a lot of mutual respect for each other. They clearly enjoy each other's company. So normally something would change. I don't know why it hasn't. And I don't care, because I love the mysteries. In this one, we got rival neighbors. And then basically the one neighbor ends up dead and the other is accused. And, who really did what. That's really what it boils down to. I loved it. I feel like I only gave this one 4 stars, though. Yeah. I don't know why I only gave it 4 stars, but I feel like there was something not quite as punchy with this one as with some of the other ones. But if you watch Midsummer Murders, the Neil Dudgeon, who is Tom Barnaby's, I guess, nephew, John Barnaby, Neil Dudgeon is the narrator for these, and he does a great job. So there's that. And then the next one is Once Upon a Tomb. This one it was surprising. So I was reading it and I thought it was a story. I thought it was a story. But it's not. It's a memoir. The store actually exists. He actually was an apprentice in the store. And the stories are real. And so he's just telling about life in this bookshop, but he does it in such a neat way. You would not know this wasn't a novel. And if all memoirs were written this way, this cleverly, I would read a lot more memoirs. There have been some that I've enjoyed for various reasons. I mean, technically The Diary of Anne Frank is a memoir. I've enjoyed that. There was Bones Washed in Water and Wine by, was it Sidney White? I can't remember. But it chronicled her family's, it just with a bunch of fun stories. It chronicled her family's life in Greece, particularly just after World War II. And then how, you know, the family eventually went back. And I guess there's a ritual in the Greek culture of you dig up the bones and you wash them in water and wine at some point, and all that went. So that was part of the story. It was fascinating. There were really interesting stories. I wouldn't want to read a lot of it, but it was so different from what I know, and it was well written, so I enjoyed that. But this felt like I was reading a novel. I thought I was just having a great old time, and then I was looking at the back and I went, oh, it says it's a memoir. I had no idea. I loved of just, you know, dealing with customers and finding books and all kinds of things. There was one inappropriate word, and then the author has a couple of moments where he shares his personal opinions on relationships that I don't necessarily agree with, but there wasn't an agenda there. I didn't have a problem reading it, but for those who are bothered by it, it is in there. Very short, but it is in there. But there was this little thing I got to read because it was like, oh my goodness. The problem, in a nutshell, is that collecting books is much more than a hobby. The sheer amount of space required to house most book collections means that whoever shares your living area needs to be very understanding, or more ideally, a co-conspirator, because the rest of their lives will be spent making room for your incredibly invasive pastime until one day they trip on a folio and plummet to their doom down a staircase. Well, good news, guys, we don't have stairs, so just throwing that out there. But no, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. My review is gone. So clearly I didn't hit submit or something. But right now, Goodreads has a giveaway for this book for 14 more days as of when this goes live. So just throwing that out there. If you want a chance to win one, they have a giveaway going on. I liked it. I will probably not keep it. And I will probably give it at least 4 stars. The only reason I won't keep it isn't because I didn't enjoy it, but because it's not something I see myself reading again. And I probably wouldn't loan it to anyone. I don't know. I think I'd rather give it to someone, you know, get it out there and let someone else have it and enjoy it. But I will have 2 places that I marked. I was reading it while I was in the hospital, so I didn't have my stuff with it. But there, I will definitely write those down on my commonplace book before I, do that. But, okay, so then I read, and I listened to this on audio. I have this nice little paperback copy, but I got the audio while I was out of town. And this thing really, you want to read, I mean, you want to listen. Yeah, it's a very good audio, but man, there's illustrations in here, all kinds of little maps, and it's so cute. But this book, I gave it 4 stars. It may get bumped up. I'm thinking about it. I don't know why I don't give it 5. I don't know why. So that's kind of cool. For one thing, in this one, you've got 5 kids. So some are more developed than others. And I think that makes sense because, because some of them feel a little flat. But you know what? Haven't you met people that felt a little flat? And when you have so many characters in a book, like you've got 5, I have 9 kids. I have some kids that, depending on the time of, their lives, there were times where one or more kids were kind of flat, and then they kind of came into their own. And so I think it's actually rather realistic, and I kind of liked it. But they are very unique children, and yet not ridiculously so. I mean, you've got one girl who is a really, really good violinist, but they don't imply that she is off the charts amazing. They just imply that she's really good. Also, you've got one who's more interested in the sciences and the things. You've got the only son who likes sports, likes reading. And even when he teases them and gets annoyed with them and everything, he likes his sisters. I like that they did that. These kids enjoy being with each other even when they annoy each other. And they do sometimes annoy each other. But for a while there, I kept running across middle grade books where siblings just didn't seem to like each other. And so we have to be awful to each other. And it got old fast. Because it's not that it never happens, but that's all I saw. It's kind of like when right now, it's not like other girls in historical fiction. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of it. So I liked the fact that, yes, they had moments where things weren't perfect, but they did like each other. So yeah, the tension, the things that cause the tension in the story might be considered a little simplistic, but come on, it's middle grade. It kind of should be, and yet not. I don't know. That was my only, I'm not so sure, but it works. I don't know. I really liked it. Also, could have done without the 8th grade dance stuff. That whole plot just bothered me. But on the other hand, it's reality. It's what is life today. And these are modern kids. It has that feel of an Enright story. Elizabeth Enright, love her stuff. Has a feel of it, but we're talking families where these kids are annoyed because they don't get to have cell phones because their parents said no. I'm like, go parents, And, part of me is going, seriously? You've got your kids walking around Harlem? Are you crazy? But on the other hand, I'm like, what do I know about that? I don't live there. You're going by stereotypes of what you think you know. I've heard and read of kids riding the subways by themselves, in the worst areas of New York. And is Harlem the worst? I don't know. I don't know if it's a good, bad, or an indifferent area. I don't know. But I had that moment of, is that realistic? And then I'm like, you know what? It wouldn't be realistic for me if myself if I took my kids to Harlem, to Brooklyn, to the Upper West Side, anywhere in New York City, there's no way I'm going to let my kids ride the subway. Maybe not even with me, much less by themselves. But that's because this is not our reality. That would be terrifying. They wouldn't know what they were doing. They wouldn't. It's just so far removed from our little bubble that it's ridiculous. But those same parents might think we're nuts for letting our kids ramble around the desert all by themselves and having a great old time when they could get bit by rattlers. You know, it's what you know. So, I mean, even the things that didn't seem realistic on the one hand are probably very realistic because it's just not my reality. So, there's that. Loved it. It may get bumped up to 5 stars. I don't know. But I will definitely continue the series. And maybe continuing the series will be what convinces me what I should do. I only have one more. One more. Okay, so the last one I read was Why Chantal Reads All Day. It was a good story. There's a lot of really rich faith in this story. I loved that you see the Vikings after the Christian influence and Vikings who haven't been influenced by Christianity. They have rejected it or haven't. I guess they would have rejected it because of the ones I'm thinking of. But, okay. I'm just going to say up front, I gave it 4 stars. That's slightly generous because of where I do have a problem. But most of the story was so good. And for the most part, it did work out all right. Slightly conveniently, but I'm going to go all spoilery on you. So if you don't want to know anything about what's going in here, just stop now. It's been great chatting with you. Scooch to the end and I'll show you my super cool new birdhouse and life is grand. But here we go. I'm going to do a little bit of a rant. The writing in this book is good. The characters are good. Everything is good. Except where it's not. And so here I go. Let's do some ranting. So in this book, you have, and I'm not going to try to go with the names. They've got Viking names I can't pronounce. For one thing, E is married to E. So I'm going to call her Ellie, and we're going to call him Edgar. It's like Edgard or something like that. So Ellie and Edgar are married. Ellie was betrothed to Dagar or Dagon or D. She was way back. And her brother, when her parents died, her brother broke that contract. They had a contract. Broke the contract and pretty much sold her to this Edgar. And broke their hearts. So she's been married to Edgar for 7 years. She's had 5 pregnancies. She has 2 little girls and is pregnant. Edgar is a brute. He's horrible. He was okay with the first daughter. The second daughter comes along. He's like totally ignored the second daughter. And this baby, she's counting on this baby being a boy and then maybe he will quit abusing her. She tried to run away once. He beat her, battered her, broke her wrist. It was, we don't see it, but we just know about it because that was in the past. But so we're talking a horrible, horrible man. He also is misusing the slaves in his household. And she knows it. And there's nothing she can do about it. So then there's this blend of Viking and biblical culture that happens with a potential divorce thing going on. And this is where I had trouble. There is a biblical, the way that he is breaking his marriage vows she has biblical grounds for divorce if divorce is important to her. Even aside from the safety issue, just aside from the safety issue, she has this biblical, but for their culture, she has to prove the abuse, because otherwise she can't get this divorce. That's fine. All of this, I'm never comfortable with divorce. So my problem with divorce isn't that it exists, because it was allowed for infidelity. The church has allowed it for safety. And I understand it. And I'm not condemning people who have been divorced. I've got to be really careful here, because I don't want to condemn. But in fiction, whether it's books or movies or whatever, too often, oh, we fell out of love. We drifted apart. Well, fine, row back together. I mean, I get so tired of the flippant tossing aside of vows, because then what it does is it takes away from the seriousness of someone saying, I have friends whose marriages have been wrecked by infidelity or by, I'm afraid to leave or we will die. Okay. So those people that are making those really difficult decisions are lumped together with people who are just, it's not special anymore. And I'm just, So you have biblical reasons for divorce in here, but they're focusing on the Viking thing, which the more I think about it, I understand why, because that's the only way she can get to safety. It's the only way she can get away from the infidelity. So for that, I can get behind, and I can understand that. What I couldn't get behind is that from the second divorce is brought up, which, by the way, is pushed by the guy that she should have married way back when, the idea is there the whole time. The idea there is, so then we can get married. I mean, it's whether it's said or not, sometimes it is, other times it's not, it's still the underlying thing. The focus is, and then I can finally be with my true love. It's not said, but that's what it is. And it bugged me because, again, it's not doing what's right because it's right. It's doing what's right. It's doing what I want to get what I want, even though, I don't know, it bothered me. It bothered me a lot. I don't know if I'll read the next story or not, but the next one isn't about these people. Now there's a secondary story going on at the same time. It's about Anara. She was a slave, and the slaveholder was trying to misuse her. His wife sent her away, gave her freedom, and sent her away. She goes away, but she's running from him. She's terrified, and she wants nothing to do with men, and it's all about her learning, seeing the way that some of these Christian men are taking care of their women and all the things, and, you know, just a reasonable understanding of maybe my life wasn't how things should be. There's all that. And it's a really good story, and I didn't really have any problems with that subplot. The next book, she is in it some, but it sounds like it's a totally different story. It sounds like a good story, but I don't know if I'll read it. We'll see. Again, 4 stars is probably a little generous, but it was, on the other hand, it was really good. That really bothered me. So, yeah. Heather Day Gilbert, Jen Cudmore. I have a lot of respect for Heather Gilbert. She's written some great stuff. And I see what she was trying to do here. I mean, on the one hand, she's just showing that there's nothing new under the sun. The stuff that the women that are just dealing with this horrible, horrible abuse, and how they're constantly doubting themselves, and they're not willing to protect themselves, and they're afraid to leave. All of those things, it's not new. It's how it's been. And so I like that she's showing that. The other thing that was kind of a problem is the the flipping between modern language and language that is supposed to show, you know, that this is like just slightly before 1000 AD, just a few years before. We've got a lot of mayhaps in here. A lot of mayhaps. And then thanks. Really jarred to be flipping around. So some of that was a problem. But isn't it a beautiful cover? I love it. So I don't know. I haven't decided. I thought I was going to definitely read the second one, but having had some space from it, I don't actually know if I will. And that's okay. I'm not sorry I read it, but I am annoyed by it. So that was November and December. Some great books. Even ones that I didn't like, there were a lot of things about them I liked. There was the only one I truly disliked was probably the Matthew 24 Fulfilled, and I still got a lot out of it. So it was a good reading month and a half. And then I have to show you, because I went to Joann. I saw this birdhouse, and I was like, I want that birdhouse, but I didn't have a place to put it. And I was like, you can't have that unless you find a place that you're going to put it. And you've got to get yourself a coupon because you're not paying full price for that thing. So I went back 2 days ago and I had a 50% off coupon. And I had figured out where I think I will put it. I don't know if I really will. It may get moved. I don't think I want it outside. I think I just want it for decoration. But look at this thing. This thing is so stinking cute. There's so much detail. I don't know if I can show you how much. Look at the back. They're the other side of the book spines. I mean, really? You can see the pebbled. It's just so stinking cute. I couldn't stand it. Huh. It has a plug in the bottom. I could totally use this as a bank. Huh. Anyway, loved it. Had to have it. For now, I think it's going to go on my little fireplace over there. When I redecorate this Shedifus, I still have all my Christmas stuff in here. I'm going to have to take that down. But yeah, that's what I read. What'd you read? You know, I've been watching some of the videos, but what did you guys read? Anything I need to know about? Have kind of a neat little stack. So I read twice this stack, I think, but it was still pretty good. Even though it's a smallish stack. Not bad for a month where I didn't really have time to read. Anyway, I will see you in a few days with my next book haul.